All right. Welcome everyone to the XAFer community stand-up. We do this every month. We try to do it the second Thursday of every month, but this month we have been extremely busy, so we have to move it to the third. I appreciate everyone joining in. As always, there is a huge power in community and a huge power of being together, of being able to have this time to talk about what we like, what we love, all the developments that we have done, our personal experiences, the work that the Dev Expresses team is doing, the new models that Yama-chan is working on, the new community things that we are trying to put together for you guys. And as always, get your experience, get everything that you have done, and just have this place for discussion. So today, I think that it will be really interesting. Let me share my screen, because we will be talking about basically, we call it XAF retro, but I like to say the history of XAF. So as always, I'm going to start letting Hoche and Dave introduce themselves, but I also see that we have here Robin Anderson. He's another Dev Express MVP. I'm really, really excited to have him here. I have followed his work for a long time, so I really look up to him, and especially his extension for bulk delete, for bulk. So I'm pretty sure, especially in today's topic that is XAF retro, he will have at least some comments to say about the history of XAF and how long we have come. Because as you will see when we start discussing this, when the first version of XAF started, there was a lot of, it was only XPO, there was no entity framework. Most of the modules weren't there. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. So Hoche, Dave, and Robert, if you want to as well, can you introduce yourself? I'm pretty sure most of the people know you guys already, but it's good for everyone who's watching for the first time to get an overview of who we are. Hoche.
Okay, so, well, my name is Hoche Ojeda. Well, Jose Ojeda, everyone knows me by Hoche. I'm a Dev Express MVP. I work for Bit Frameworks and Sari. Basically, my hobby is to code whenever I can. So, well, I'm glad to be back to the meetings again. So, Dave.
Thank you. Yeah, Dave from Yama-chan Technology, using XAF since it was released day one, end of 2007, early 2008. And to this day, we do a lot of consulting and custom coding and training and all that fun stuff. So it's great. Robert, did you want to jump in today and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Robert Anderson. I also have been using Express App Framework since day one. I took a gamble. I was the lead developer at a company that had been using Delphi for a long time, and we suddenly had to try and sell our piece of software to a huge bank that said it must be written in either .NET or Java. And I had to kind of find a platform that would let me impress the bank. And I kind of gambled on a thing that was totally in beta at the time, because it fit what we needed to do. And if they hadn't continued, if Express App Framework hadn't continued to kind of develop, we would have been stuck. But now I've been using it every day since then in a serious application that's in use by 130 huge multinational corporates and clears I don't know, $100 billion of payments every year. What it does is a bit like these things like TransferWise and Revolut. It does what's called netting. So if I owe you $100 and you owe me 50 euros, it would be silly to pay both payments through the banking system. Instead, you work out what the difference is and you make one payment, and it saves you a little bit of money. It's that, but applied to all the payments in a huge multinational group, like Nestle use it, or GE use it in the US, and all of that sort of thing. So it's a serious application built on XAF for many, many years. We're a team of 3 coders, all experts, all Express App Framework fans. We've hacked the system every way you can. We are not using the new version, so we're still on ASP.NET version. We're hoping over the next year or two to migrate, but it's a big, messy, complicated business, so might not happen yet. So I feel I'm a bit behind you guys on the front of all of that, ASP.NET Core and all of the new stuff. There we go.
Got it. Hey, thanks a lot, Robert. So I want to point out this is Robert blogs. There is a lot of great information here. It's of course from a few years back, but it's still a lot of them are still really valid to this point, and I really enjoy reading all of his blog posts. And if you see load testing, he goes really in deep and with some really technical topics. With that, I want to mention
I'm hoping to add to it soon. I have a backlog of stuff. I've been so busy with a whole lot of other things. I moved to Portugal, to Lisbon, which is wonderful out here. But
Nice.
you know, they've taken up my time. But yeah, I'll be contributing to the blog again soon.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. I always encourage everyone, like, even if you are a beginner, if you do something and just share it with the community. One, you will learn it better. Two, when you forget, you will have some place to come back to. And three, we all benefit from it, because you won't believe the amount of things that I have learned from even the people that were training. So thanks everyone for being part of the community. With that being said, as always, join our Facebook group. There is, at this point, almost 2,000. I think that we're growing by the day. I'm really excited about that. Before, Jose and I used to write everyone on LinkedIn, hey, join the Facebook group. We want to have a community of staff. And now it's just more organic. Everyone is joining by itself. Again, follow the Express App Framework group on LinkedIn. One thing that I want to mention is this testimonial for one of the XAFers, where he's actually scaling XAF, and he's using Linux, and he's deploying to with a containerized deployment model to AWS. So these are the type of examples that I really get excited, because that's the XAFers putting XAF to the test, putting XAF to the limit, and seeing the results and sharing them with us. Of course, as always, Gitter, this is another place where Dennis and all the other community XAFers are here. So ask your questions, get some answers. XAFer Weeklies, I was looking at one of the first issues of XAFer Weeklies, because right there are really two pieces of information. The first one is the Oliver Stone podcast in 2006, where he's talking about XAF CTP. So this is a really great listening. So please go for it. You can go at this is, of course, this podcast is already discontinuous, but you have the MP3 here, and you will see here Oliver describing everything that is coming in XAF when it comes. I don't think that in that time the term was GA, it was released, but it was CTP still XAF in that moment. And another one that I think that is really nice is in 2011, Apostoli gave another podcast in the Hanseman podcast, and you can see also him explaining the difference between the Expand framework and and XAF, and how his goals were different and how they don't intersect each other. As for all the XAFer community meetup, we have it recorded, and we have a huge playlist. I'm still amazed when I see that it's once a month and we have a decent amount of videos. So thanks for sticking with us and for everything. And we also have another meetup that is called Arizona.NET Cross Development. I just want to mention, because we are going to have, we had Jeffrey Palermo talk about Blazor architectural panel. This is a great talk. I will definitely recommend it. It's not a beginner talk, but he talks about source control, about DevOps, about Blazor architecture, component life cycle. So I definitely recommend this talk. And we will be having James Montemagno in July talking about Blazor hybrid and then malware, how we're going to be able to use Blazor and run it in our malware application natively and use everything that the device has to offer. So any sensor, any hardware related component, we're going to be able to use it. And as always, all of this Blazor architecture, Blazor hybrid with .NET malware, I think that is really useful when we're going to translate that to XAF. And hopefully at some point in the future, we can have our Blazor components that we're using in XAF reusable in malware, in a mobile application or some. So we just can hope that the things that we can achieve here. Now, with that, I think that the center of the discussion today, because I was trying to find how we can resume the history of XAF, how far we have come so far. If you see right now, we have XAF Blazor that already have a responsiveness with a Bootstrap. We already have a lot of like the JavaScript interop with Blazor. It's really easy. You call the JS runtime and just execute the JavaScript. In XAF Web, we have a lot of clients still using XAF Web. I understand completely the hesitation for the migration. It's a huge it's a huge thing, because if you think about it, you have been developing your application for years and years and years, and it has grown and it has so many features. So translate that to Blazor right away, that should do it with caution. But if we go to Dennis' blog, and this blog is already discontinued, but you can see here 2012. This are all the articles that we have for 2010, 12, and I want to start with like just going over them real quick. Right here, Dave, Hoche, Robert, or anyone else, if you want to like add any comment, just unmute your mic and let us know how you were using it at that moment. What is the thing that you struggled the most? Because I was talking with Hoche, one of the first systems we did, almost all validation was in code. It was not using the validation module. So think about that you didn't have that tool available for you. And you see the updated, as we always say, that's one of the things that Hoche used, but at least a few other XAFers like me, we never use it. We use it with scripts in the database side. We use with any other methodology. But right now, if you see right here in 2012 is when XPO was going to support OData v3. We did so many OData services based on the XPO layer to connect to a mobile application, to connect to another web app, that this brings like some nostalgic memory about. We are not using this for like forever, but it was a really nice way to expose your data model right away to something outside of XAF. And it was come out of the box with a template that DevExpress provides. Right here, think about this, the next and previous action, they were not available for server mode. You have to be client side to have all your objects in memory, and then you could use the next and previous action. A lot of things that we right now do take for granted, it was not there at that moment. It was just really in early stage. And look how much we can do in this time. Okay, minor tools in the DB updater. New data source criteria property. Let's see what is the date of this, because this is interesting. October 2012, there was no data source criteria property. It was only data source property. So the ability to also add a criteria on top of that was something that it was introduced at that moment 10 years ago. Okay, let's continue. Model A.
I think earlier that we should like start like talking about the topics already, because you already mentioned some of them that are really interesting. For me, actually, you mentioned one of the cases. When we first started using XAF, of course, it seems like a great tool, right? Like you have the forms and the disputes and everything and the lookup, because we were calculating the amount of code that you need to do that in the most traditional way when you do it by hand, right? When you have to drag and drop components and then say the data source, the data member, and display value and so on. That takes a lot of time, right? Just to make any custom form. And with XAF, you get them for free, basically. And you change your model really fast, like your application model, like your business object, and then you get a refresh form, like in seconds. That was like magic for us at the beginning. But you mentioned that case right now, that there was no validation at that moment. And for us, it was so important that it was so dynamic that we were able to create rapid prototypes. So we decided, okay, what do we do with this? This seems amazing, but what about the validation? Well, there was no way to make them. So we had to invent a method that was called on-save validation, that we call in every save. And then we did a lot of if statements in that method. So actually, the company that I was working on at that moment, they released an ERP based on that idea. So we took a huge risk at that moment by going to XAF, but it saved us so many times that basically we were trying to replicate another ERP that the company owns. The ERP came from Fox, and well, one of our employees was also working in that project, Douglas, and it was so productive that only him did the whole migration, like in something like 6 months or less than that, from the Fox Pro model. It was a rewrite, basically, and even with missing some stuff like the validation module, we end up having a product faster than we will do it by hand. So even for me, like XAF only offering the CRUD the crude possibilities at the moment was more than enough reason to move to an application framework. And for me, I was like 25 years at that moment, so it was my first experience with an application framework. Because you think, oh no, I should like drag and drop all the forms, right, and do it like by hand. But no, I think an application framework is the way to go, actually. So, well, that's my 2 cents with the validation module.
Got it. No, I think that one way to go about this is I'm gonna quickly do a rundown of 2012 here in Dennis' blog, and I'm gonna let you, Jose, take 2013, and we'll go from there because there are a lot of great things here. Like even small things, like if you see about this ticket before, it was giving you an error like saving object is prohibited by security rules. There was nothing else to tell you what security rule, what is the issue, what nothing. And then if you see, they start saying for the validation rule, these are the properties that is giving the error. Even those small things were making our life a lot harder at that time. And there are a lot of, you see the ORM data model designer that now is going away. Now they are doing a survey thinking about if they just need to actually keep support for the data model designer. Passing a connection string from the command line to the DB updater, that was not even possible at the moment. And things that I like, you see, tooltips, they were not there. They were there in, let's say the date again, it was going to be November or something like that. No, it's still October 2012. Domain component and new security. And this is one of the things, we have still clients that are using domain component, and now they are trying to move all of those interfaces to XPO classes so they can actually start using Blazor, because right now they are stuck in that regard. But in the moment that domain component was released, that was a huge thing, and it was a really nice way to somehow architecture your application. All items on the lookup edit model. Another DB updated improvement. There was a lot of updated improvement in that time. If you see, even from 2012, there are already people that were passing the XAF application, object space, everything to non-XAF applications, and they were reusing everything they could over there. One thing that I like is that from that time, I have seen this example so many times, I know a lot of XAFers that are still having issue how to create a new user account, restore a password, and doing all these authentication and normal functions, let's call it like that. And we have the same example that Dennis gave to us, or that Dennis created from 2012. So basically, if we, like as I always say, read the support center, a lot of great tickets every day, and also read what everyone is in the community are sharing, and you will have a gold mine in your hand. And I hate that all the conference that they used to happen before, that they will have a section about XAF, about training in Europe, about coming here to the US, to Vegas, to do some summit, and one of the sections, one of the topics was XAF, that has gone away. But even if you see, the way to declare a view controller in a generic way with detailed view contact, that was not there. That they were added that in that 2010 timeframe. Same thing. A lot of people still ask, how can I create a diagnosis, a confirmation dialog? Let's call it a message box.show that we use in WinForms. How do I use it in web? How do I use it in an agnostic way that just from your module you do? And that same answer has been there for years. So in 2012, created detail view and put a message, and then you can do the same thing exactly in both ways. In that time, there were not those like right now, show view strategy message, and you have a nice toast with error, success, or info warning, red, yellow, and green. There was nothing like that. That came like in that moment. Unusable modes. I think that Martin is the one who has like a warning in his office. Every time that there is a new unusable node, everyone stop, everyone have to check the model and make sure that nothing got messed up, because that's a huge thing in the company that they have. I don't remember the number, but it was something like 900 companies using their ERP. And that's the power of XAF. He started by himself, and then right now I think he has 8 developers working on that application. Robert just shared an example with only 3 developers developing a huge ERP system. I'm pretty sure Dave can have example of him and Adam by himself creating a whole application from one of his customers. Jorge has done the same. I have done the same. So you think about the productivity that just one developer or two have with this framework is amazing. So let's continue. Okay, disable actions. This is just an example that Dennis provided. And if you see, even from that time, we have already using functional testing, easy testing, that I know that a lot of clients are not putting as much effort on that, but I will say it really pays off to put it, all those things in place to avoid regressions and everything else. Let's see. The course rules template that we already use by default. We don't even think about it. Right there. Since 2012, they have all those templates for us to create persistent objects, to create view controllers, to create everything that we need. Right here, this is just an example of how to debug your application and send the logs to DevExpress. But this is one that I like. One of the things that everyone who starts off struggle a little bit is to compare what are traditional buttons, menus, toolbar, and everything. And right here, then it gives us a rundown of how to log everything in the ribbon is an action, every button, every parameterization, and where those things goes, like what are, like in a list is a list editor, in a detail view is a property editor. So those things are, of course, for us now, they look like we take it for granted, but definitely those are really things and XAFers starting out will look for. And right here, XPO session with XAF object space. If we see here, and I'm not 100% that I'm right, but if you see 2012, we still don't have the I object space interface. We still don't have entity framework support. We still only have the XPO object space and the session. And there is no concept still that we're going to be using another ORM. And then that's a big factory that they did where they extract the interface to allow other ORM entity framework. I know that Jorge has done tests with CosmoDB and basically any other crazy scenario that we will want to accommodate here. Okay. Links to files. So the file size system data model, that was already there. So even from the beginning, we have that available. Conditional appearance, getting some love here. And this is, again, we have not seen any more XAF training in a while. I know that we from the community, like we have XAFer training, we have Yama-chan. I think that Alex Miller also have his site where he's doing some training for the people starting out, but we have not seen any more of these company-wide events that I would like to at some point participate on one, or us to organize one that everyone can meet, have a drink, have a beer, have a coffee together. It's not the same through Zoom. And you see, this is when the new official Facebook and Twitter page started, and we already have almost 2,000 members in our Facebook group. So I'm really excited of how far we have become. And I think that basically that's 2012. You see, since 2012, we can even embed custom control and forms in XAF. So Jose, I'm going to let you take 2013, and then we go from there. We can split us a few years just to go a little and have a discussion on everything that we are seeing. But after that, everyone can jump in and ask questions or share their experience. So you want to share your screen, Jose?
Just one sec. Just need to close a lot of windows here. And
Jean Paul put a really interesting comment about 2012. DC was like a great idea, architecture, love, and now in 2022, it's just like, don't touch it.
Just one sec. Let me go down here. Are you seeing like yeah, the blog? So okay, so well, this is something that I done sometimes. Like sometimes I actually do this is like to include custom forms and basically what most people don't know or don't think about is that XAF applications are regular .NET applications. You can do whatever you want with them, basically. Basically, the limitation is the your knowledge on the language. So here you can mix and match. I will go against that in some cases, but sometimes you have a form that is already done, so why not to reuse it, right? So this one was a big one for me. Protecting individual fields with the security system. Actually, I think that one of the things that I love the most about XAF is the security system, because in like my first or second job, I have to develop something like a security system, and I kind of really know how hard it is. Of course, mine was a joke if I compare it with the ones that comes with XAF. But basically, I think that in this meetup, what we are realizing is like how much things we get like somehow like for free, right? Like the application framework continue growing. So this is something that I love. One of the things that I don't like about this idea is that since in XAF everything is calculated somehow, well, queries end up being like kind of expensive if you don't take in consideration what's going to happen with all these permissions and everything. So, well, this is something that I also did a few times. Like, actually, I have my own set of actions. You don't need to depend on the ones that XAF provide only. You can go ahead and start creating your own. And I remember like we have a discussion with one of the customers when we're trying to selling them the idea of using XAF. And basically they say like, okay, like I think XAF is limited. We need more than like the 4 actions that it has, right? But usually no. I mean, if you break an application in like conceptual ideas, I mean, I think that XAF has everything that is needed in general. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. I've seen companies with their own ORM and a few validation frameworks, for example. But the thing is that the onboarding, for me, that's one of the main problems. Like, if you're in a big organization, how will you train everyone in your custom system, like in your custom framework, in your custom ORM? So it's better to rely on one of the big companies, and for me, developer experience is one of the big ones. So I will totally go with an application framework that is already done. Actually, also again in one of my first jobs, we were moving from Visual Basic 6 and trying to decide that which way we'll go. And we were thinking, okay, like let's go to Delphi. Delphi seems like good enough. And actually Delphi was good enough in general, like amazing performance and everything. But people have, I mean, at that time, my boss, he was afraid of that BCL will not continue. So then we decided for .NET. And then in .NET, we found XPO, and then we found XAF, right? So basically, it was a really amazing thing to discover. And well, one of the big competitors for me at that moment was this application framework from Oracle. I don't remember the name right now. Well, it was Oracle Forms, and then it was a different name. Well, again, so let's go in up here.
One thing quickly, Jose, I installed yesterday DevExpress 12.1 because I wanted to do a XAF application in that old version, and it didn't even run in Visual Studio 2017. So I think that I needed 2015 or 2013, and I didn't have the time to put everything together. But what sounds really interesting to me is that in that installer, there was light switch extensions. So there was something that DevExpress was providing to include in the light switch that Microsoft was trying to push at that moment, that they then discontinued and they moved to Power Apps. So I would like, again, at some point, someone from the DevExpress team to give us the whole rundown, what went through, when, like, if you see, I don't know if you guys have listened to Richard Campbell in the history of .NET, and it's beautiful to understand everything decision that was taken in that moment and why it was. I'm pretty sure that they will have done things differently now that they have the experience. All of this, come back and rechange a few things. For example, Dennis in one of the past meetups was saying that the value manager was not a good idea. That was something that it was supposed to be for both platforms, and that being a problem for all the static connotation. So he could explain more about that. I would love at some point to get this type of like history from them. Sorry, continue.
So well, documentation update, nothing to talk about there. And no, in general, like let's talk about documentation. It's like I guess for Robert and for Dave was the same. When we all started, there was no documentation at all. Basically, I post like 10 tickets per day. Actually, I think that most of my learning regarding .NET came from using XAF actually, and asking them, okay, how do I proceed in here? Because the support team is like amazing. Like as long as you are able to like really put your question, I mean, together, like to write it in the proper way, right? So you will get an answer in less than in around 24 hours, usually an example or something like that. So also you were asking to people that is more proficient maybe in the language, in .NET in general. Like I remember like at that moment, Dennis used to answer a lot of my questions, and I was thinking like, when does this guy sleep? He's always answering my stuff, like, and I'm not the only one using XAF, right? So so let's see what else we have here. Possibility to improve ergonomics. So
doesn't Dennis have like a record of a number of tickets responding one day?
Yeah, I remember that we met one time with Dennis, and he told me like he has the record in the company of being the support agent who answered the largest amount of tickets in one day, which was like 87, something like this. So if he's human, in that sense, and he was like 25 years old, something like that. We're not that different in age. We have something in the chat here. There is a notification, so let's see. Talking about the ergonomics of the views. This is something that I like in general about XAF. One of the things that I love the most is the font generation, and that it kind of is really useful out of the box as the UI that they propose. Because I remember like on my first job, again, like maybe 19 years old, I was doing a form in Visual Basic 6, and my boss called me and he's like, your form doesn't make sense, it's awful. And it's like, well, like that's what I could do at that moment. And it took and he did a lot of observation, like you should move this in here, you should group this in some way. It will be more like intuitive for the people who is entering data. It was a system for inventory reconciliation that we have to do it just one time per year, like beginning of the year. So every year I have to do like a small tweaks on that system. But it was also my first input-output system, because before that I only worked on making reports. So it was my first input-output system, and my forms didn't make sense at all. So when XAF came and I didn't have to draw anything, that was amazing for me. Actually, I picked it for that. That was the main thing that I used to choose to select it as an application framework. I remember we were comparing against ADF. Okay, so let's see. What else do we have here?
Also, quickly before you move to the next article, I just want to answer a question that we have in the chat that Mohamed right. So in 2020, DevExpress removed the mobile platform from the solution wizard. If they have any plan to bring them back, so they don't. And XAF Mobile is completely discontinued. We will talk about XAF Mobile in a little bit, because I did try a lot to have a decent performance in the XAF Mobile, and I was unsuccessful. It was working. It worked for really small scenarios, but besides that, I think that they did the decision of putting it on maintenance mode and not keep going with it was a good one, especially with that. With XAF Laser, we can have a completely responsive application that it actually performs really well, really fast, and is really scalable. So yeah, no, that's not coming back to the solution wizard.
Just one note on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just one thing to say on that. We're not using every bit of the mobile application. We don't really support mobile, but we took the back end for the mobile section. And then when we moved to 21.1 or something, it no longer existed. And we thought, uh-oh, we're a bit stuck because we're relying on that for our, it was for our API. We decided to use that as the background. So we just took the code from the 20.1 version, the last one that it existed in, and we tried to compile the source code from DevExpress against the new platform, and it works fine. So they haven't kind of publicly announced it, but I can't find many breaking changes in the new version. So you could try just recompiling the old 20.2 source code against the new DevExpress assemblies, just taking the parts that are the mobile application. There's just like 4 or 5 assemblies, and they compile fine in the newest version. So you can get a long way. It may, obviously that's not supported, but if you really want to use the old version, you still can.
Nice.
Well, that's great experience. Actually, that is something that we always talk about with Javier, is that well, in the case of XPO mostly, because that's what in general what I've done more in my life, like experience with developer express, is XPO related systems. So if you take in consideration like the, I don't know, 15 years or 18 years of XPO, and you count the breaking changes, maybe there will be like 6. If 6 will be like even too much, I think. So you can basically use your code from 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and it will run. So that's something that is really nice. It's like they always try to use the best design patterns, and of course you can make mistakes as a company, but they have done not as many that they might code actually. So that's something good in that sense. I cannot say the same regarding Entity Framework, at least the old versions. Entity Framework core is a different animal, so I guess that's going in the right direction, but not Entity Framework, the traditional one. So, well, okay, providing predefined values for in a property editor. Basically, this one I also use it a lot because there were some cases where you don't want to do data binding to a list. I mean, to another object to show a list. So you can do it by an attribute here. And I think that I was using that at that time. I mean, when I needed to do it, I found actually the implementation that they did, and I rely on that for really, really long time for some forms. So again, these are a lot of little things that we take for granted at the moment, and it's good to know because we have new developers in the company, and sometimes they are reinventing the wheel. It's like, I will do an attribute to do a controller to do this and that. It's like, if you look deep enough, you will find something. And I think the Supercenter is like a great source of value in general. You can spend days checking like examples there. I remember also for one time in my career, what I did, like every day I woke up and I checked the support center tickets to see what was new and what I can learn from them. Okay, so let's see, reordering enumeration. This is something that we had to do before. I think that in the first ERP that we released using XAF, it was on, of course, in Spanish. It was done in El Salvador, and we had problems with the nums. There was no way to do localization over them. So, and I remember after that they include even to put an icons and stuff like that. So it was great to have at that moment. We need to come with some nasty tricks to do that in runtime. Okay, skip. This one, well, I don't think it's so important. Okay, so regarding the lookup, here I have like some interesting stories. One of the stuff that I hate the most, or I hated the most on Visual Basic 6, was to do lookups. There are forms that are pure lookups sometimes. And well, that's something that I love in XAF. I think in web, there is at least in web forms, they did have a little bit of performance issues, but with Blazor it's not the same. It's not the same case. And actually, every time that I see web forms, it kind of looks really old for me. I don't know if it's the same for everyone here, but for me, it looks like it was like 20 years ago, even though it was like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. Okay, what else? I guess like this is something good also that I did use a lot. We had a loan system making Salvador. We make it for a company that basically they sell you like appliances, but they give you a loan for the appliance. And it was a really big company. And the thing is that they have like really strict validation rules, and they wanted to do them at save moment. But as I always tell the customers, saving is not the time to do any validation. You should allow the users to save, and then you should not process the records if they are not in the state that you want. So in my personal experience, when I do a system that is for my family or something like a friend or something, those type of systems that you have to give for free, give away for free to your cousins or stuff like that. So I use this approach. Everything is a warning. And I never use the same context actually. I create a different context, and then I do the validation on that context, which I call process in general. So I don't allow anyone to move forward if the record is not in certain state. Well, this is something that I hear a lot on the community. In general, in .NET community, everything is a memory leak. Everyone complains like memory leak. And since we do performance analysis here in the company, I can tell like most of the time, like memory leaks are not related to them. Actually, I think Manuel was talking about this one time, that how many tests they have in like unit tests and integration tests on the Dev Express Office. So nothing that you can nothing that you can make basically as a single person company will surpass their expertise. I think. Well, we have the special cases like Apostolic, for example, but in most of the cases, those memory leaks are your own code. So it's better to check how you write your code in that sense, because usually, well, if you come from a C++ background, you're kind of clean in the sense that you have to clean up your own code, right? There is no garbage collection there. So if you're used to do that, then your system will perform well. But if you come from a kind of Visual Basic background where you leave everything up to the compiler, then you can cause memory leaks. So actually, I have not seen any accusations of memory leak regarding stuff that is valid at all. Of course, it can exist, but so far I have not seen one.
Let me jump in on that too, actually, because we do a lot of code reviews where people are saying we have a memory leak, whatever the case may be. 99% of the time, it's people not unsubscribing from global pieces like the application. They'll hook into something like the object-based creating, and they never unhook from it, and that controller never gets disposed. Even when you subscribe to things when you're on activated, you don't have to, but it's a really good idea to unsubscribe from things in the on deactivated. It just holds the life of the controller a bit longer. So whenever you subscribe to something, unsubscribe from it before you clear it out at the end.
Yeah, and also like basically you need to remember that there you can create a loop, right? Like first you have the event handlers wire up. That what will happen there is that the garbage collection process will not happen. And also the controllers, they do exist through the life of the application. So if in one controller you make a huge list and then you put it in a field, in a class, basically, or in a property, it will still be there all the time. So we have cases where people say like, that after I run this process, I use like 700 megabytes of RAM and it never goes down. It's because the first time you run it, it goes in the controller and it's never garbage collected. So that's why you have that type of performance problems. And as you said, most of the time is something that people don't want to hear is your own code because they have tested really well. Let's see. Well, we have a case there is one of our customers. I don't know, like, well, Javier might know better than me here. We have one of our customers that for generations and for years and years and years have been carrying the reports version 1 module because they have so many reports that they didn't want to move to a different version. So for me, this was always like a little bit complicated topic. They had to give it a try, like many times to see what was the right way. And the way that is now, I kind of like it, that the XAF report is basically a normal extra report with a special data source. Before there was a class called XAF report, if I remember well, and some variations in the middle. So I think they finally made it, like they found the right solution for that. But there must be some people out there that is still using the old module. I know, I mean, we have one customer that he's either still using it or he just moved away from it like last year or something like that. So I don't remember, like, besides the design part, why did they move? What technical blocks they have to move to a different version? But if someone wants to jump in this case, like, feel free to open the mic. Let's see.
We're still on reports v1. We have 190 reports, but a lot of them are rather complicated with sub-reports, occasionally direct SQL queries and stuff like that. So it's really a matter of being able to guarantee that after we do the migration, we're producing the same result. And it's hard. So I've actually just finished building a big test library that does exactly that. It produces the PDF output of every single report we have. And it kind of saves that off as expected output. And then now we can migrate to version 2 and make sure that the result is the same. And we're hoping, therefore, to finally do the migration. But it's something we have to do with, extreme caution. A lot of these reports were delivered 6 years ago, and we've never had a call about them, and people are still using them. And we don't remember what they're supposed to display or what, how it's supposed to work. So if we make a change and we're not sure, we could break something. So we're still on reports v1. It all works perfectly well. We have an awful lot of extra engineering to make them work well. We can write the code in Visual Studio, make sure it compiles, and then we have a T4 template. Does everyone know T4? It's like to inject the code that we wrote. We use a T4 template to inject the code we wrote in Visual Studio back into the regex. So that is extremely useful. We can code in Visual Studio. We know the syntax is correct. We can even debug it, and then once it's ready, we can inject it back in. So we have a lot of things to help us, which we're hoping still to use in reports v2 when we finally move. But it's a delicate operation. I think that's always the situation. I think. With regards to, we're actually hiring right now. One of our 3 coders is retiring. So we're looking for someone who knows XAF framework or at least something similar and whatever. And we started the job of looking for the new guy like a week ago. If any of you guys are interested in it, it's the position.
You can give us a call. We have experience on that.
Yeah, exactly. So the position's based in Geneva in Switzerland, and ideally we'll have someone in Geneva because we really need somebody who's also able to do some of the kind of software as a service type stuff in the office. But anyway, we started looking, and it's clear that the proposition is slightly different from what most kind of young ambitious coders want. They want to learn the latest React type framework. They want to know, when I've learned that, what can I learn next and all this. Whereas what we're offering is really, we're 3 coders who've been in the same position for all of us there over 10 years. We've all become extremely attached to this one way of doing things. and it's extremely comfortable, and we're all experts. So it's a great environment. We get an awful lot done very quickly, as you guys all know. You know, the framework's very good for churning out extremely solid code. But it's going to be, what we need is someone who wants that, who wants to be with a tiny team of friendly experts, and not necessarily something where the turnover is quick. You know, we would have great difficulty onboarding somebody new. It would take us ages before they were productive. They'd just, you know, they would see like, you know, oh, you need to change the color of this button. And they would think, I know how to do that in ASP.NET. But to change the color of a button in XpressApp framework's really not that simple, and not that easy. You know, I always say the easy things are really hard in XpressApp framework, but you get a lot of the hard things for free. They're really easy. So things like a report writer or security, or things that we've already mentioned, are really easy in XpressApp framework compared to like any other, you know, approach. But the easy things are often surprisingly hard, and like changing the color of a button or something like that. So then you end up with you need to find a coder who wants that, says, okay, I want to be part of this teeny team that produces extremely good quality software for banks and for things that are really hard to, you know, we have to pass massive security audits every once in a while, and we pass them every time thanks to XpressApp framework, because we, you know, they don't make any mistakes. It's good, it's solid, it passes things. So you know, but yeah, it's a tricky hiring proposition, I think. I don't know if it's everybody's experience, but it's not the same as
if I can,
you know.
If I can add my 2 cents there, the first thing that I always say to everyone in your team is everything is hard until you understand it. Yeah, sometimes changing a color is hard, but as soon as you understand how XAF does things, changing another color or changing the border or changing something else is the same methodology. You access the control, the underlying control, find the property, you change it. So the first time, of course, there is a mentality shift that you need to have that is different from how you do it in WinForms and ASP.NET Core and everything else. I will also argue, and I have seen this especially with people that have been using XAF for a long time, they never want to go back. They don't want to draw and drag controls one by one. They don't want to build the whole screen. They just want, sometimes one screen you customize it, but besides that, I just want what I know it works, what I know that it's functional, function well, and I can do it quick, and I can have something on my client's hand, because we love technology. I like to know everything that is going up, the latest things. I like to see Blazor WebAssembly with Entity Framework Core and SQLite. I like all the new things, but I also like providing value to our customer. I also like stability, and if something is work, don't change it. I do have a client that is not the same that Jose was referring to, that is using both reports, report 1 and report 2, side by side. They don't want to change anything that they did already. Report 1 will still be there forever, but they use the new capability with report 2. So you can find those ways. And regarding hiring, I will argue, I started saying that everyone who has done XAF for a while doesn't want to go back. I will argue that the value that this developer will get, because XAF is not only doing the code, you are basically doing everything. You are working with the database, you are working with the front end, you are working with the back end, you are working with deployment, you are working with DevOps, you are working with testing. So I will argue that someone, like sometimes the new developers are getting somehow dragged or drowned to the new technologies. But with XAF, we have Blazor, that is a really new technology with ASP.NET Core and all the new patterns. But not only that, you get the experience of building a complete system from beginning, from scratch to deployment. And I don't believe that a lot of framework companies have that opportunity. So I will argue for everyone who's starting that that's a great opportunity. Join that small team, learn how to do software from beginning to end, and you will not regret it. After that, if you move on your own, you will have all the skills that you need to build for yourself a software, to build to another client, to even again, as Jose say, he masters .NET through XAF. Even if you decide later on to only do Blazor, to only do things, you will have a lot of skill on your toolbox. That's my 2 cents, Jose. You can continue there.
Okay.
Well said.
Thanks for jumping in, Robert. I think that's a really interesting idea that you have, because I hope that your framework for testing reports is open source, because I was about to start writing one yesterday. So because I think that that's a neat idea in the sense that we get a lot of report migration projects. Like last year, we moved like hundreds of XAF reports to XAF reports. And there are testing frameworks for unit tests, for integrations, for coding, for Blazor components, but for reports, they are not like super common. So I think it's like a neat idea. And also people really, once you do a complex report, you don't want to do it again, or you want to really, really make sure that the numbers are fine, because usually financial decisions depend on that. So you really, it's not like there's that is something difficult to use or see. Is that if that little number in the report is wrong, then you can be losing a lot of money. So I think a testing framework for reporting is like an amazing idea in general. So
Well, I'm
I
hoping
hope
to
that
do a
there's
blog post about
Yeah, sorry.
how to do it. I'm so hoping to do a series of blog posts. It's a bit complicated because you've got the T4 element, which actually takes all the reports in your system and generates a unit test for each one. And then there's the bit of taking what's a PDF output and trying to compare it over many versions, over possibly many years. So we convert it to text. So it's not an ideal representation, but it's good enough. It comes out in columns and so forth, and you can see where the differences are. So there's quite a few moving parts. I think I'll try and do what I've done in the past, which is to explain how it works and then put up a GitHub repository once it. But it's
I would totally feel that.
Yeah. So there we are. I'll try and do that over the next next few months. We'll see.
Great. So we will have an interview with you once you're done with that. We'll have an episode just about reporting. Again, I think we have already an episode about reporting. Anyway.
Let's when you scroll down, if it's small things, let's just mention it and keep going, because I want to at least try to cover the main points until 2018. So just if there is a small, just mention it, and then Dave will take 2014, and then we'll go from there.
I'm almost done with 2013. It didn't seem to be an exciting year, not as 2012 for you. So let's see what else we have here that is like. Well, Safari modules, a lot of people come to us like asking about pre-built modules. I don't know if that will be a niche somehow, but they ask, do you have an accounting module? And well, we refer Safari to them. Let's see. This post I love. This one I really love. And I used to use it a lot on my when I was like training basically developers. It's like, okay, this is how it works. This is MVC, and these are the built-in controllers. These are the controllers on the extra models, and these are the actions that are hosted by those controllers. So this really gives you a map on how everything is, especially regarding the system model. So you want to know, like, okay, if I want to basically wire something on the saving action, how do I found it, right? So this documentation, when it came out, it was great. Again, something that I saw from them, from my presentation. Let's see. This one I cannot talk because I basically don't use the model editor. My systems are as they are. So Javier is the one who always like do the little tricks, make them beautiful. He really can put himself on the mind of an end user. This should be like this, like that, like that. For me, it's like, here, take it. This is the form. Fill it. So let's see what else we have here. How to see pronunciation? Well, like, again, like this might be something like it seems simple, but sometimes handling those little dialogue controllers where the stuff are hosted, actually, it took me a while to figure out how to use the dialogue controller and what the stuff are living in there and which actions you can have and how can you rewire them. Now I use the trick a lot. But well, of course, it's something good to have, like basically tricks on how to handle those little windows. This WCF, this is something that we did a lot with Javier because we wanted so much to move XAF to Xamarin. We did all the possible things, including recompiling the source many times, to move as much as we can to Xamarin. And we did a lot. I mean, and then Blazor came out and we had to drop everything. But basically, one of the huge things that I was using when Xamarin started to be a thing actually for .NET developers is like, well, at that moment I tried to evaluate again all the possibilities that I have. And one of the things that I was evaluating is backend services. At that moment, there was a one called Parse that now is owned by Facebook, and they discontinued it. And then there was one called Dream Factory. That Dream Factory, I did a lot of work in Dream Factory, but the C# SDK was not that good in general. But in the end, I realized, well, why should I need to find a backend system? I have XAF, and now they are exposing the OData model. So when I found that, I felt like I found the holy grail of mobile development, because modeling everything on XAF was really fast and easy. But then doing some type of complicated queries in OData was a pain, really a pain. But I was using simple data client. The guy who makes that that client, his name on GitHub is Object, and I think it's a good name. So let's see, simple data client. I don't know if everyone is using OData, but for some time, I think it was one of the greatest ideas if you want to move to, hold on, from computer. This. So if you need to integrate your system, your subsystem with something else, OData for me was the way to go. You call basically is HTTP, right? So post, get, put, you can do those type of requests, and you can interact with any type of system, C++, Delphi, you call it whatever. All of them have an HTTP client, so you can interact with OData. So for me, well, at that moment, SAP was stuck in Windows, right? Only Windows servers. But if you want to interact with your subsystem, that's the way to go. For a moment, I went crazy offering OData services to all of my customers. All of them say yes, so I was really into troubles. We even with Javier, like again, one of our crazy things that we did, we had a code generation tool for OData that would generate your client classes for Xamarin actually. So let's see. A gentle introduction to XAF. Well, we have a video like that.
I just want to mention, Jose, that gentle introduction from Seth Juarez, that he then moved to Microsoft. It was one of the first videos from the community that you could watch a whole application being built with a lot of explanation about stuff. After that, I will say the other video was that I will say iconic like that was the one Dave and Adam did with building a CRM from scratch. So those two videos, I always recommend all our students start with those two videos, and you will see it, because one thing is reading documentation, another thing is seeing the application. You saw someone actually type 3 lines, and then you have an app. So those videos, yeah. I think, and it was in 2013. So.
And well, you might not remember this, Javier, but there was one moment that was something called the Express TV before YouTube existed. And it was a set of videos by Oliver Storm and Gary Short about how an application framework should be. And I used to like F5 all the time, like, there is a new video, there's a new video. Every morning it was Support Center and the Express TV for a while. So it was a lot of fun. How to install controllers. A lot of people, yes, they want to do something like this, but you have the controller manager in XAF, so you have to do it like that. This I just realized when we moved to Blazor how to do that, because I remember for our first application, I remember that we need to do the controller manager again for writers. I don't remember for which reason. Let's see, something that is important, a big change. Nothing big here. Again, also nothing like important, highlighting. This one I do use a lot, the syntax highlighting, because I have a module for scripting using Gint, I really love Gin, and then I found a video on YouTube like a few years ago that says like the best editor for coding is Word, because you can have everything in different colors, fonts, and sizes. So your code might mean something. So that's why I started using the rich text editor from DevExpress. I use it for a while, and I like it because I can do like what is not important. I make it like a small font, and what was really important was huge font and different colors. So I use it a lot. Now I move my modules that do scripting to use Monaco. But the thing that I miss the most is that you can have like mix and match of colors and sizes and fonts. And basically we're in the top. So we have some Russian posts here. And let's see, XP object experience. Well, this one I can actually talk about is something that the objects, I don't think this is the article, but maybe it is, where they do the comparison of what an object space is, a session is, and a unit of work is. And basically, they say that the object space is a nuclear reactor. You don't have to use that to import data, right? Because you will go through a lot of other processes. And if you remember Javier, or import module, they have it has an option of changing from object space to unit of work, which is faster actually. So it's good to know the difference. And at that moment, people didn't understand what was XPO, where XPO finished, and when XAF start. It was kind of a mix up at that moment. So that's it. That's 2013. Let's see what we have in the chat.
Okay, Dave, you want to take 2014?
Yep, sounds great. And I'm going to scoot through this fairly quickly. I know we're chewing on in time here. So yeah, at this point, 2014, we're coming into year 6, year 5, no, year 6 of the framework kind of being live. And I mean, when we started, I was actually writing my own framework at a company trying to rewrite their application. And we spent probably 3 or 4 months trying to do exactly that, you know, create grids that automatically bind and use some of the layout controls and do custom languages. And everything we did in 3 months, we got an email that night saying, hey, you know, check out this XAF framework, because we were using the DevExpress tools. And so everybody went home that night. I stayed from 5 o'clock that night until 8 the next morning, basically redoing everything we'd done in 3 months in one night using XAF in its initial release, kind of day one. And the boss came in at 8 in the morning and put it on his desk and said, it's done, you know, metaphorically speaking. So amazing that this, you know, what this framework can do even from day one. So yeah, so as we move along here, you will see that there's training that was done, you know, for the first quite a number of years. They kept doing it around the world. And then as the community grew, there became more training and consulting facilities like ourselves and like you guys that can kind of help. So they don't do nearly as much training as they used to, but it did certainly help get the community growing. So this one's a very long-winded article, basically talking about how to work with underlying view items and their controls, kind of getting into the nitty-gritties of really customizing the UI. And I encourage anybody to, who, especially if you're new to XAF, take a look at this and figure out, you know, how the pieces all work together, especially at the view level. Things like changing window title, views modified, this happens automatically now, but if you want to interject in there, there's an example how to do that. So the kind of things like that of, you know, when we first started this, there was no documentation. There was no way to understand how to do this short of going into the source code or submitting tickets to DevExpress. So even in 2014, this was still pretty prevalent of you know, asking those questions. And then Dennis was blogging a lot of that. Hey, check out this one, check out that one. What I found interesting here, the audit trail performance. If you're still using the audit trail, we use it all the time. In fact, I love it, but there are situations even today where it's still low performance, especially when you add collections to items and start, you know, adding and removing items from that collection. and it tries to figure out, what's changed. It does that in a separate thread or a separate session, and it can take a while to load. But the performance improvements they put in here back in the early 2014 was significant, because back then performance was, I don't want to say subpar, it was not a focus at that point. Talking about validation, control, conditional appearance, and security. So this falls back, especially when you do kind of classic web development. Back in the day, people would put all their validation and all their security on the JavaScript side, and then wonder why they got hacked. The same thing is true in XAF. You can't use conditional appearance to withhold security. When you're designing your application, we actually try to take a 2 or a 3-tier approach, where conditional appearance is part of that. Data source criteria is part of that. But the security system itself is also the fundamental part of that. The idea is that if one breaks down or one gets messed up, either through coding errors or configuration errors, somebody turns on or deletes the wrong thing in security, what prevents somebody else from seeing others' data that they shouldn't? Things like conditional appearance, right? Hey, you're not part of this role. You should not see an hourly rate, or how much somebody makes, or somebody's social security number, or whatever the case may be. That should never even hit their machine. So having conditional appearances hide that doesn't make sense. You have to use these pieces together, and kind of security became a big focus. Believe it or not, we're actually on, I believe, the 3rd iteration of security, the security modules. And this seems to be one that's stuck around the longest and offers the most flexibility. So pretty amazing. Localization field captions. Yeah, okay, so just more helpful articles. Displaying and updating non-persistent or persistent properties for a non-persistent one. A lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes you have to put the same property on a view more than once and work with it, in separate ways, or you want to calculate a property that you then want to have effect. So that kind of thing was difficult originally, and then of course, as people started doing more and more of these types of things, these solutions came up, and Dennis would blog about them here. So certainly check those out. They're quite interesting. Grid view context menu. So things like the show and hide footer, filter editors, that kind of thing, all that became available in the web, the classic web templates back in 2014. So originally, when you right click, the same issue we're having now with Blazor, in Blazor, you right click on a grid header and you get this menu, right? I'm hopeful that we get to this in Blazor as well. But again, it's part of the growing pains. It's things you had to implement yourself. WinForms is a big push back then too. 2014, a lot of WinForms apps still on the go. In fact, WinForms is still my favorite platform, believe it or not. We're doing more and more Blazor stuff, but there's something so freeing and flexible about WinForms. The amount of control and customization and functionality you have in comparison to a lot of this web technology is unmatched. So they put a big focus on, kind of following the Microsoft Office style layouts and UI elements, including the ribbons, the application forms that came out in the original ones in 2007, and then upgrading again in 2014 to kind of a more flat style with the application menu. So yeah, kind of neat to see that. Using a control that's not integrated by default. If you haven't done this, if you're new and you have not done this, do this. There's many ways to actually do it, between a custom form, a custom property editor, or a custom view item. You can get those controls in place, and it changes the feel of the application, the flexibility of the application to be unlimited. Again, it's just a .NET application, so you can put anything in there. Targeting for multiple target view IDs. This used to be frustrating, and creating reusable controllers is extremely important. If you have an application that's growing and growing and growing, you probably want to go back and try to make your controllers as reusable as possible. One of the limitations was in the target view ID, you could only put in one actual view ID. Previously, we would say, the target view type or target object type. And then we say on the activated, hey, if it's this view or that view or that view, then do some code, otherwise just return. So it was nice to see that they were expanding this kind of target, kind of scoping out. Alrighty. Number of failed login attempts, especially interesting on the web side, but on the Windows side, after 3 login attempts, if it fails, you're kicked out and you have to close down your browser window, or the application, the WinForms would exit. They're introducing those kinds of properties. These are common things that most of their clients would run into, and so they're solving those problems. Yeah, let's get past that one. Take a look at that if you're interested, by all means. A small bug with the customization form where the blank space would show up and everything would be squished. That was a very short 14.1.5, I believe. Oh no, 14.1.4 is where it showed up. Oh no, 14.1.5, sorry. And it was quickly fixed. There's been, I actually remember in I think it was 2014, there were a couple instances where they would do a release and then it was a few days later, they would do another release. So they would find issues like this and they would pump out a really quick next full version. And I think that really drove the requirement to have all those unit tests that they have now. There's thousands of unit tests that they run on XAF prior to any release.
From that article, Dave, I just want to mention this is the first time that we're seeing the iObject space. So I'm not really sure exactly when the framework support was released, but this is the first article that I could find that we can see that a reference to the iObject space. And it's not until 2015 that there is the first blog that Dennis did about Entity Framework. So not sure about the dates Entity Framework support was, but
yeah, I do remember. I actually have it. It's like in the last version of 2011, the iObject space came into the picture. So after that, maybe it was not as used, but I remember because my license expired that time, and then I needed to do something, and I needed in the new version, and I renewed after like 3 months or something like that, and because I needed that change, the iObject space change. So yeah, 2011.
Nice. That was a big change for us too, because the original object space, it wasn't an iObject space, it was just object space, had that session tied to XPO right in it, and we use that everywhere. Object space didn't have find object, get object, find object by key, any of those. That layer of abstraction was added to support Entity Framework after the fact. It also became a big turning point when they started putting Entity Framework in to get the XAF types info system really cleaned up and performing well. And if you've ever played with the iTypes info, the amount of flexibility you have and customization you can do in there is actually amazing. It's undocumented and kind of things you can do out of the box. You can't do it out of the box, but you can get in there and you can do some really amazing things. Just because they're building a metadata version of your business objects essentially that then get used at the XAF level. So pretty impressive. And of course, the iObject space providers, that gives you flexibility in terms of dealing with different data stores and different combinations of data stores, even at the same time. So if you're doing, connection to multiple databases, the object space provider, you could actually hook into that and create your own iObject space provider to, to start dishing out different object spaces depending on the type. And that's where we started finding that the non-persistent object space and the way we deal with non-persistent objects started to change as well. In fact, that's gone through a few iterations. So that non-persistent object space provider was kind of a good example for us to learn from and kind of follow the DevExpress patterns in terms of replicating that for other for other object-based providers should we need to do that. So kind of a neat one. So is an object new within criteria that didn't exist before? If you had, if you had an object with an integer key, you could say, hey, is the integer 0? And that was about it. But as soon as you started getting GUID keys, GUID empty didn't work if you were working in a web list view. Where you created multiple new rows and tried to modify one, it didn't know which one you're working with. There was no distinct key, no unique value at that point. So they built in, on the session level, or basically the data level, saying, hey, is this a new object? Does it exist in the data store? Things like that. Forcing Boolean property, it doesn't matter. Personalized security and the runtime. This one was neat. So giving users access to the model file, especially in WinForms, but even on potentially in the web, if you have somebody trying to do customizations in the background. It's rare, but it does happen. Once they get in there, they can screw a lot of stuff up, right? You shouldn't be touching this. You shouldn't be touching that. And what are they really going in for? A lot of people want to change the name of actions. They want to change the name of captions and categories and messages. So this was kind of the first year where you could really customize what's actually being shown in the model. So your users can have access to the model and they can get into, whatever nodes you provide them with, but you can also lock them out of certain things. They're not allowed to go and change the show view strategy or the messaging system or any of that. So yeah, a nice improvement there. Safari is putting out some new stuff. Very cool. It's always great to see community entities putting out new stuff. It's early as the expand framework, and then up to the new stuff we're seeing today. Custom property editor based on the ASPX color edit control. This was groundbreaking back then. Now this is the new version, part of their out of the box property editors. And then application performance. Again, we talked about the audit trail performance. This is another one, launching the applications. Particularly huge on the WinForm side for us was, you'd sit there and the little spinny wheel would go forever, right? It would take for a long time for that login screen to show up. And so now they're doing the model caching, the model DLL generation. So it doesn't have to happen every time you run the application, only when it's been upgraded or has changes. So that was kind of the start of those big performance improvements. We talked about memory leaks earlier. Hey, they fixed a few back in 14.17. Documentation updated. Yeah, great. So funny enough, yeah, we used to get a lot of this. Things just crammed in here. And way back, you had to actually go into expand out the columns node and pull things out manually. You couldn't drag and drop off here in the first couple iterations, I don't believe. And then certainly the right click column chooser and putting stuff back in, that wasn't available either. So the usability from both the runtime and the design time model editors has been pretty significant. Even in the most recent releases, we see, dragging a node from one thing, especially like navigation, onto just the items rather than having to expand it, the items to drop it in. It's a small improvement, but it makes a difference. So they continue to improve. It's pretty awesome. Entity framework support. Yep, there we go. Webinars and recordings. I think we're at the top here. Yeah, this is the first year they put out an entity framework version of the XCRM demo. Yeah, so I mean, it's been out a while. You will notice that as new modules come out, they do typically prioritize the XPO version first. So I like to encourage people, if they're starting an application, to stick with XPO. I personally prefer it. But there's that piece going for it as well, which is that the new modules that come out will typically be XPO supported first. And then this stupid bug, I remember this. When you would drag and drop when the designers were still a thing, when you would drag and drop from the toolbox into the design surface, the action wouldn't get assigned the components. So it would just disappear off the form, and it drove people crazy. You had to go back into the actual designer file and change that. Now with the code only approach of doing controllers, which is honestly my preferred way of doing it moving forward, creating actions, if you do a new simple action, pass in the controller it belongs to. It just makes it easy. So this is interesting to see back that long, but now we're changing the way we work with controllers and properties. And then of course, more on the XAF types info subsystem. Again, if you're getting comfortable with XAF and you can do most things, you feel like you have a good grasp on things, it's time to start digging into this to really understand the inner workings. It's amazing what really happens in here, and it will make your life easier moving forward when you do have to do those little one-off weirdo things. So that's it for me.
Nice. Thanks a lot, Dave. I'm gonna share my screen now. And let's move quickly to 2015. So I'm really enjoying this travel down memory lane, because there are a lot of great things that I think that we now take for granted. But okay, let's start scrolling up, and there are a few like conditional formatting that we're just gonna skip, but feel free to jump on it or ask if you have any questions, put it on the chat. Some customization of the view. Basically, right now we can even clone a view, change things. So a lot of things were coming in that time. Property editors, I think Dave already showed the property editor for the color picker. So even those were available for us. That was, again, there was a lot of customization you have to do before that to get it to work. Performance, that ticket about performance that also Dave showed on 2014, that ticket has been updated. I think that almost every couple months, with new information, with new ways to profile, with new experience from the user, with new best practice. This is an object that if you have used in XAF enough, you will have gotten at some point. Right here is the most common scenarios. Formatting of the tree list editor. If you see, we have the tree list editor already available for us to drill down into our data. The system.type, if we are using an expression, criteria expression, and we need to filter some type, this is how we do it. The designer and the wizard, most common questions, they have a really nice article. So right here, I never use this, but I think that is really interesting. They created a controller that you were able to delete your dashboard view on runtime. So that's not something that we use too often, but I guess that at some point there was a request for that. Right here in 15.2, we are starting to get with more and more things, but if you see right here, we have already the maps module. We have a lot of example of a lot of tasks with the maps. So that's something that came from XAF Web that it wasn't there before. Auto-saving master when a child is created. And I think that then they added that link to parent object immediately. If we can keep going, the media object, that was something that there was not before, and they introduced it to deal with various rates and all the image types. The same get object not rearranged, so that's another fix right there. And if you see right here, we're talking about entity framework again. So I think that Hochi's reference 2012 and forward entity framework support start growing bigger. And let's do 2015, because I think that 2015 was short one. Let's scroll all the way down. I'm really eager to get to the XAF mobile part. Okay, connecting XAF application to custom data source like a web service or data service, NoSQL. I think that in this point, we're starting to get to non-persistent objects. So before, again, we didn't even have that. And then if you see the non-persistent now has a lot of more support. Actually, in one of the last couple of years back, they did the non-persistent object base, and they actually created a lot of things for us to not have to take care of that. But again, XPO still have support for a lot of great other database. And if you see here, they give you the explanation about XAF is designed to work with business or domain object, not with an API. But through the use of non-persistent object, you can map those persistent objects to any API or any type of data that you want, even a stored procedure or even something else, and just display there. And it's a really nice explanation here about XPO, about object space provider, even for XPO, that for entity framework. And if you check the code right now, there is also entity framework code, object space provider, non-persistent object space provider. So there is a lot of things here. And we see here that they, for the first time in 16.1, are talking about introducing the XAF mobile application. And in this part that I was waiting for get to the I want to show, because we still have the demo available. So basically, this was the demo that XAFers provide. Basically, the same, like I think that contact task demo that they have everywhere. And you can see here the list. I honestly don't, I tried a few times with simple application. The performance was not acceptable. I know some people that has done some work around and I have had it usable, but I even the UI didn't like that collection where another button that takes you to another screen. It was like, let's say that you want to go back now to your menu, you have to click back like 3-4 tabs. And if you go more in depth and more in depth, I think that the user experience, it was not my favorite. If you compare that to now XAF, and this is again the same example with the same, probably the same name, Karl Jaboski, the same picture and everything. If you see, right now, this is just more beautiful. One is responsive completely, so it's not really beautiful. And two, you see, look the collections. You have the collections right there, right beside. You can change tabs. You got, so in my opinion, the modern look and feel is a lot better in XAF Laser, and actually, I believe also the app is more fast due to the virtual DOM that Blazor have, that is keeping a copy of your DOM in memory. I only change the transmission, only send back and forward, only the change, only the HTML. The screen doesn't change until you need to change. So I do think that this was a good try, a good attempt, but I definitely like this refreshing was driving me crazy. Every time that I touched that, it was just refreshing. So we'd love to hear, even in the chat or someone on mute, the experience of the community about using XAF Mobile. In my side and right here in the US, the connection is really decent. I'm not sure how we could have used this in, I don't know, in Latin America and other countries with less connection. Okay. If anyone have any comment about XAF Mobile, please throw it out there. Okay, more improvement to the model editor, and actually one that it was no long ago is not. Now you can drive in the navigation directed to the navigation route instead of all the items. I will know where to add it. That's something that it was added not long ago. Okay, new in 16.1, and if you see non-persistent object, as we were discussing, permission policy. So right here we are seeing that the new security system is taking place. So we have the old security system, and then I think that in this version 16.1, the new permission-based security system, when we have all that we have right now. Right now, we even have action permission, navigation permission type. So all of those, and we have the deny all by default. All of those things came with this security. And of course, you can always, I think that I have it somewhere here, upgrade from your, and right here, there are the two tickets from upgrading from report version 1 to report version 2. Same thing with upgrading from the old security system to the new permission-based security system. So that was in 2016. We keep going. And again, we're here talking about the migration, all the steps that we need to go to from one to another one. Nullable value support for Boolean. So right now we can have a Boolean with a nullable and do anything that we need with it. That was not available before. Now right here you see like just basically, I think this was an article about how do we find good XAF talent. And a couple years back, we didn't have the same community that we have right now. Right now, the communities every time growing up. More people are willing to share the knowledge. More people like you guys are willing to spend your Thursday like couple hours just talking about XAF, talking about technology, and creating open source projects and commenting on the support center. But a couple years back, nothing of that was. So if you wanted to find a XAF developer, it was really hard. I think that right here was where Dennis also put samples like Upwork, like XAFer jobs, and so on, so on. Okay, so a few other things about editable values in the detail view, layout for certain users, and I think that right here there is an example with and let's open it for just a second, with a object layer, or where they actually create views for roles. And this is not an example with the object layer, but you see they actually are trying to find views depending of the name. So if the view is called contact list view administrators, that view will only be shown to administrator, and they have an implementation here. There is another one where they actually create an object layer, and in the query, before it gets sent to the database engine, they filter. They are aware for the role or for the user. So customizing action control, right here is more of like how XAF work with the underlying control, especially actions. One thing that's really important in action is category. That will tell the framework where to put that action, where to add that action in the ribbon, in the detail view, or some other place. More feedback about the customization on actions control. Right here, how to skip the logon when you are debugging or testing. And I think that all of here we have been developing, and every time that we have to run the application, we have to log in. So basically this is show you how, if you are in debug mode, if you are developing, if you are in active development, how you can just skip that, authenticate your user in code, and just keep going to avoid. If you think about, if this saves you a couple 30 seconds, like when you add that at the end of the day, when you are developing, it does add up. This is a ticket about the controller management module that Yama-chan created. This is a lifesaver. I always say to everyone, go to this ticket, download that module, and have it on your hand. Yama-chan already have better documentation, really, with all the steps that you need. But basically, this was a way to just activate or deactivate the controller and see if the behavior that you don't want is still there. So let's say that there is an error, there is something that is happening, and you're trying to figure it out, and you say, it's on my business class, it's on my controller. So right here, you can disable your custom controller, but also all the DevExpress and everything there. So this is a huge ticket, and it was on 2016. If you regard nested view commands in the main ribbon, so there has been some places where you don't want the toolbar of the nested grid view right there. You want it on top because you were doing something with that grid view. So there is a way to actually move that, all those actions, to a new page on the ribbon, and we can see it here. It doesn't open the picture. So okay, same thing, mapping action to certain ribbon and ribbon group. And right here, there is a controller example that is really nice, because you from the model are able to say, okay, I want to create a new page, and that new page, let me see if this open. Okay, perfect. I want to create a new page, and in that new page, let's create a new group, and in that group, let's put the edit model action, for example. And as you see, it does create the new group on the ribbon. It does create the new page in the group. It does create the new groups, and it added. And you can do that in runtime following that ticket. Multi-browser tab support for XAF Web. That is a huge one. A lot of people were asking that, and it got done in this release. So if we see the way that the reset password screen works, this is the way to force, for example, sometimes you need to log in and then add for a parameter for the user. Do you want to go to this screen or to this other screen? Do you want to filter? Do you want to choose this company or other company? So this is a way that with the same functionality that they are using for the change password on the first logon, for you to add your custom screen, and with that custom screen, ask for a parameter, show information, or do anything that you think that, again, maybe you want to log into a company and then in that first screen log into a department, or do any of those functionalities. Okay, this used to happen a lot before. The dictionary already contained class info, and there was one time that Dennis sent us an email that every time that happened, please send in the Visual Studio log and send in all the logs. So we sent that, and I haven't seen this error in forever, but this used to happen a lot on the model editor. And basically we have to close Visual Studio, open it again, and it goes away. So that's another small thing, but that they do take in consideration, and they fix it right away. So let me see the, okay, right here you see that they are actually adding more logins. So they tell you exactly where the errors are happening, and it gives you more information. So I'm pretty sure that before that was a lot harder to accomplish all of those. So let me open this one, because I think this was one of the biggest tickets where they talk about basically adding these theme colors to XAF web, because that was not there out of the box. Also font, and you see that they make it more somehow streamlined. Instead of having this all gray, they make it more modern looking. That was a try from someone from the community as well to use Bootstrap with XAF web, and they kind of were able to have a functionally prototype, but it was not all the way there. Okay, and that's it for 2016. Jorge, you want to take 2017, or should I keep going? Or Dave, any of both if you want to. I think that Jorge is not available. Okay. Get close, because then it's only logged here until 2018, but it's good to see everything that all the chronological order of all of these tickets gives a lot of the history of XAF. Okay. Application model. So this is basically sometimes you do a full text search and it gets some values. You click on it, open the detail view, but then when you go back, you lost that filtering, and maybe you wanted to have it there. So this is something, a solution to fix that. So ASP really say the performance, so they are all the time trying to find ways to improve the performance of every lookups of all the list view. So, and if you see, we talk about the preview and the next action not being available if it was not in server mode. But before it was just client and server. And right now we have client, server, data view, instant feedback. We have queryable for Blazor. So there are a lot of data access mode to manage how you are loading the data on your application. And that makes a huge difference in performance if you're using the right data access mode, also with the right action, with the right methodology. So hiding the new actions from the menu if you don't need it. Sometimes you also have a few classes that inherited from the same one, and you want to hide the base class, or you want to hide one of the other ones. This is another section that they put out a whole fix for. XP query. XP query is one of the greatest things that I have liked about. This is of course a XPO only property, but this gives you a lot of I would say performance improvement, because you can tell them, okay, from this object, please only bring me, and you can do it with a query, with a link expression. Only bring me the name, only bring me the number, only bring me, and you can see if you are profiling the application, if you have the log, how the query is not bringing everything. If you bring, okay, give me the customer object, it will bring everything. But if you say, bring me the customer object where the name equal Jose, only that, and select only these two properties, and it will only load that. So it's a really nice tool to have in your disposal. Okay, and there are a lot of discussion about this, because it used to be protected content, but I think that some people didn't like that. It looks like you are hiding something from your employees, or so basically there are a few ways to hide the field that it has a protected content. So there is a quick controller there that is, you don't have access to a property, basically hide it. And I think that there was other way to, instead of say protected content, change the caption or just put an asterisk. I think that was the other way over there. So right now there is a few attributes: visible in detail view, visible in list view, visible in dashboard, and browsable files. Browsable files is the one from system component. When you put that to true, it disappears completely from your UI, but it's still in your persistent class. It's still in your, you can access through code. It's still in your database. It's just not available for the UI. It will not be showing in the model. it will not be showing anywhere. Now, when you're using one of these attributes, visible on reports, visible in detail view, in list view, they are not showing by default, but definitely you can access to them through the column chooser. Definitely you can access to them to the customized layout. So it's something that you don't want the client to see, but they will have the choice if they want to add it later on. And it was added in this version. Okay, Active Directory, validation, performance tuning, all of those appearance and validation. Sometimes they need to do some queries to check if the user has permission, if this is required. So this is a way to go about that. This is the example about embedding the an iframe into your XAF application. And we use that in XAF Laser as well with the render tree. So this is a nice ticket because this was the foundation that we use for when, for example, the dashboard module was not available in XAF Laser to somehow inject a Blazor component inside of XAF Laser via an iframe. So this is a nice ticket to also have in our toolbox. Audit trail. And what's new? Let's quickly open to see if there is something considering. Okay, that's basically the action about if you delete yourself in the application. And right now there is already a validation that you cannot delete the last admin. You cannot delete your own user. And right here we started to get OAuth. If you see right here, we have Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and in our company we have implemented Twitter, Instagram, Azure B2C, and basically any OAuth provider you are able in. With XAF Laser, it's so easy because it comes out of the box. You put a few settings in your app settings, you're good to go. And that's one of the videos that I'm planning soon for the YouTube channel. This is the controller creation performance optimization. We know that every control, when we run the application by reflection, XAF goes, finds it, and registering the type. And there is a controller manager in charge of that. But right here, they added, I think, the property that if you don't, let's see, I think if you don't unseen the view or if you don't need it, the controller doesn't get instantiated. I don't quite remember exactly. Let's see. Basically, they are adding a optimization on the process of creating the controller. So they are not getting created if they are not. I'm not saying. We have to open here.
I think this is where they started to introduce the idea that a controller, when you do something like frame.get controller and you pass in the controller type, it wouldn't always return the controller if it wasn't part of the activation or part of that scope, basically.
Got it. So perfect. It's just a property. If you add this optimized controller creation to true, that's it. It will actually do all of that. Don't instantiate the controller that is not going to be activated in nested list view. And in that regard, this is another very nice property, the foul setting compatibility. This was a long before the 2017, but this is a way now that you can set that property, for example, to 21, and it doesn't affect your application. So basically it's like all, but if you start using 2022 or you are using all the old ones or the latest, you can see everything that is done by default. Just by setup that, it does all of those things for you. And again, those are things that the wizard is doing now for us. But most of the time when you have an old application and there is a new thing that we need to set up, we do it one by one, and your startup, your module class gets really big. So right now, only one property, and you're good to go. Okay, and basically this is XAF new. What is new in 1.3, and as you see, using maps in mobile. So in that time, there was a lot of push to get the XAF mobile working. Actually, that React SPA application was one of the huge things that DevExpress tried to push, but when Blazors came up, they actually decided that they have to move to Blazor, that the future is Blazor. And I think that there is an example that they took, like kind of similar to all the examples that we have discussed, that they spent in this React-based application like 3 months, and they rewrite it like 80% in a week, something like that. So they decided, okay, Blazor is the way to go. Everyone also is supporting this decision. And I think that that was one of the best decisions that they have, because right now everything is in our .NET wheelhouse. Okay, Let's close here and let's continue. Okay, the reset view actions. I think that in that time they were actually saying how many people are using. Please give us some feedback about that. Where should we put it? Because one thing that we found is like XAF was giving us more than we need. So sometimes we need to hide actions that we don't want clients to be asking for or just getting confused. Okay, as right here, they are saving views as a variant with the view variants module. New grid column in the column chooser. So right now you can basically be able to do that and select the fields and everything and so on. This is a nice example that it tells you how to add those control properties for your classes. Keep going. Web editors. ASP gridless editor with composite keep. That's a nice example over there. This is the other one. How to migrate the old XAF report to the report module 2. I think we showed it already, and there is a way to programmatic, but I want to mention one comment that they put in the chat is like scripts, for example, you are not able to do it in code. So you have to go one by one and basically fix those, because it's not like there are some reports that you can definitely do it in code and migrate them. There are a few others that they need extra work. So right here, they added immediate post-data attribute support for XAF mobile. Validation rules, now they got a small enhancement in the model editor about grouping it together, that you can now even create the validation rule there. Issue with design assembly. Column chooser in web. This is a nice one because this is tell us that XAF is not only fire and forget. You need to when your application grows in time and grows, like take care of the database, take care of your SQL execution plan, take care of index checks, take care of whatever you need to make sure that the performance is not on the database side. Of course, we can optimize also the application side, but it's also to always remember that the database part is a huge component in our application. Okay, right here, XAF mobile. I don't know if you guys deploy it, but basically you took that React SPA with everything, all the DLLs from their Express and all the huge non-modules package. That's one of the initial build of the initial loading of XAF mobile. It was taking a lot more time based on all those node modules, but you have to ship all of those, send it to PhoneGap, put a wrapper around it, and then is when you will deploy it to the Apple Store or to anything else. So that was the way to do that in that time. Logify, honestly, I used to like a lot Logify. We used it extensively, and then they decided to discontinue. And it's a shame because we did use it for a few years, and it was one of like good support, good logging, but it seems like not too many people were using it, so there was not sense for them to keep supporting them. OAuth 2, not only to web, but only to Windows Forms. And right now we have that out of the box in the wizard. So if you're doing the wizard out of the box, you have that OAuth support with a check. So I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, they show this new skin, but it was not by default. So we have to create a controller at that time to enable all those skins. And I think that Yamachan had that controller in their free modules until XAF actually added in the next version.
Yeah, we had that for a little while. And then I think in the last year or so, we actually pulled that back out for new versions. So
yeah, then out of the box in the new version, it was there. But before that, that was not there. If you wanted to have one of these layout, there was a lot of choices there, a lot of colors, and that was the same time that the Yamachan font size controller. So you could have a mix and match of all those two. I use it for the PhonoCell, where we also use a WinForms property to make all the controls bigger and use it in a Windows tablet and try to mimic some type of tablet application in Windows. So, and it worked for a few months at least. We then switched it completely to Xamarin after that. Okay, if you see, there are more examples here about XAF mobile, about signature. And all of those examples, most of the time, I think that because they were JavaScript, we can add it to Blazor. So we basically, and it's even easier because calling a JavaScript in XAF, let me show you that example for just a second. If you see right here, we have two choices. Calling JavaScript on XAF web, you have to create a controller. The controller, you have to implement the XAF callback handler, register the script, call the register start to the script, and then somehow use this raise XAF callback to get the value. So a lot of steps involved just to call a JavaScript from XAF web. Blazor, just these two lines. You get the service, the IES runtime, and invoke it. If you have the JavaScript already reference in your project, you're good to go. That's simple it is. So imagine how far we have come that now we can do any of those integrations quickly and right to the point. Okay, let's keep going. You see right now we are starting to see the Office module as well. We are seeing the spreadsheet, the heuristics editor, and everything else. A few other good things we already discussed, but you see that right now the two data access mode, data view, and feedback, instant feedback to make sure that your list view loads faster, and the instant feedback especially loads asynchronous. That way you can even see the shadow of your list view without the data until the data actually arrives. Okay, this is a customer survey, specific. So, but right here we have the how to diagnose the permissions that the user has, and you can see right here the ticket where they actually show how to go and know, okay, this user has permission to this class, or it no, or it doesn't. Another article about SQL Server and the model of data and pool connections. So this is drag and drop file attachment. So there are a lot of great articles here, and that gives you a evolution of SaaS. So basically, you want to take the 2018, and I think we are done with the articles.
I can do that. So let me bring my screen back up here.
Yeah.
1 second.
Let me stop sharing.
I flip back to my 4K shortly after. So. So am I doing 18 or 19?
18. That's the last one. That's the last one.
Right? Yeah,
yeah. After that, I think that everyone is basically familiar because it's XAF Blazor. After that, it came XAF Blazor, and they moved completely to the DevExpress block.
17 enhancements. Yeah, so security system got upgraded again. They keep adding stuff to security. It's amazing. Determining types, faster opening of detail views with lots of items in XAF win forms. This is the lazy loading. Very useful. But when you wrote controllers that used to work on the unactivated and expecting controls to be created, we had to go back and rework how those were created, which is fine. No designers for generic view controller versions. This is the start of the fall of the designers for controllers. Generic versions just cannot be designed on the Microsoft side. So that kind of started down this route. And honestly, creating controllers purely in code now is actually cleaner and easier once you get used to it. View variants and conditional appearance got upgraded. I think this is list view related. Here's this editor, yeah. So for a while, you used to be able to hide and remove columns in the list view. For a while, they took that back out. It looks like they were putting in some features back in there. So take a look at that one for sure. Theo's uploading JPEG images using the system drawing image type properties. So again, this is where they put that media data object in. Honestly, I still use the byte arrays more than I probably should. But yes, there was an issue with this. Model editor improvements. What happened here? Developers well, I have to go look at that. Things like attributes to put things on customization forms in certain places. That's probably included in part of that. Learning through reading the source code. If you haven't dug into the DevExpress source code, do it. It's interesting. Even if you have no plans, I shouldn't say even if you have no plans to change it, don't change it. unless you absolutely have to do a custom build like what Robert was talking about earlier, with pulling stuff forward. Don't touch the DevExpress code. There's no need. You can usually build stuff right on top of it. But have a look in there because there's a lot of really cool stuff. You'll start understanding how the pieces work, and you can certainly debug it as part of your code if you have an issue. We do that all the time. Single choice action, visual sub item, your feedback is needed.
Yeah, that one, Dave, was remember when we have just one single choice action, it still was showing the arrow, and you click the arrow and there was nothing there. So they changed that.
Yeah, so it basically replicated. It was the new action, basically, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the new, if you had a descendant type, it would show the little drop down arrow and you could pick it. Otherwise, it would show up as a simple action. That's the feedback they wanted. That was fine. Yeah, another bug with the Visual Studio 2010 and 2012. Okay, moving on. Diagnostic tool for security system. This is awesome. If you get stuck with security and you cannot for the life of you figure out why something isn't showing up in the list, use the diagnostic tools and they will tell you, what's being applied, what criteria is there. Don't just focus on the security diagnostic info. Also look at the view diagnostic info, because actually this week on Tuesday, I had a call with a guy and we had the same problem. Something was filtered out in security, but the security criteria made sense. It should have shown up. But on the view side, there's another piece of criteria applied from another controller who didn't realize. So both those things get combined together to produce the result of the view. So yeah, certainly use those. They make a lot of sense. And the fact that they introduced those in 2018 is great. Missing icons in active tabs. This was an interesting bug. I don't think we ran into it with any of ours, but there were people that, yeah, all their icons would disappear when the MDI layout was reloaded. Integrating unit of work and XP object space sense into app. I have to go into that and actually look, but two pieces of advice if you're bringing in lots of data using a unit of work versus an XP object space, use the unit of work or even use an explicit unit of work. It tends to speed up the import. Old entries in the XP object activity. If you're back to old entries in the XP object table.
That XP object type table especially applies for people who has had their system for a long time and they upgrade version, and this XP object type grows bigger and they have a class and then they delete it. So when for years and years you are using your system, that XP object type sometimes gets really huge, and there are a few objects that they should be removed. But DevExpress doesn't do it for you, and they explain there why they don't do it, what are the fees of doing it, and how you should go about it.
Yeah, that's also important if you start changing your namespaces on your objects and you have existing data out there. You should go back and have an update script update those XP object type tables. Rick's touch editor module and the lookup based property in 18.1. Again, they're bringing in the Office module at this point on the website in particular. I look forward to having that fully supported in Blazor as well. User signature, again, this is that article that Jose showed earlier, just kind of improving upon that. So check that out. Check for the type of member type info. Boy, it's been a while. Okay, so they're doing some type validation before you actually run the application, because either the application model doesn't contain or contains an extra property. It doesn't actually exist anymore. So that's in there. I don't think I've ever actually had this exception come up in the past. The future of the old rich text property editor. This was, and the HTML property editor. We actually use the HTML property editor a lot. And then once the new Office module came out, that kind of went the way of the dodo. It wasn't needed anymore. But the original rich text property editor had some kind of neat quirks as well, and some other functionality, especially the HTML property. I guess some backend functionality of actually seeing the HTML versus the Office rich text editor, where that piece is hidden by default. Submission forms 1813. So yes, we run into this all the time. We'll have OID everywhere, OID, OID, OID. And so as you add these, there's a tooltip that comes up. Again, it's a minor improvement, usability improvement, but it really helps, especially when you're, at 2 hours into a phone call trying to debug something. That's huge. SVG images in WinForms. Yeah, use them. They're pretty. What else is in there? Skip this. SVG property editor. Force PNG icons option is no longer required. Use image loader instance. Use SVG images instead. So if you have a legacy application, this is the variable you need to go and change. Just flip over. Be aware that once you flip from PNGs to SVGs, a lot of the images and their meaning to you does change. So make sure you look at all your images, make sure they still make sense, and make sure they're all supported. What do we got here? Quick question on changelog. Okay, changelogs. The changelogs that DevExpress offers are amazing. If you haven't dug into them between versions, you can now specify the range. I'm upgrading from 20.2.1 to 21.2.5 sort of thing. It gives you everything, and you can kind of customize that range. Really helpful. So earlier we talked about the OIDs and having unique values. This is actually an extension of that again, 4 years later. So take a look at that. It's kind of neat. Tabs. I have to look at that ticket as well. Nothing super significant, but a neat ticket. How to access manipulate custom user control. So this is a lot about using interfaces and working with controls either in Windows Web Blaze or whatever from a platform agnostic module, basically. And merging records. This was really cool. The optimistic locking that's built into XAF and XPO is great. It's prevented people from overwriting data for a long time. The issue is that something minor changes. Like somebody changes a first name, and somebody else is working on the same record and happens to change the last name. And when the second person goes to save, it doesn't work anymore. Sorry, you have to reload, and you lose all your work. Which, if you're just changing one field, is not a problem. But if you've had your application open at that window for an hour, you went out for lunch, came back, and you click save. Sorry, do it again. Well, what did I just do? So they introduced the merging functionality to try to compare the differences, and in doing so, try not to override each other, basically. There are scenarios where the merge can't work because there is conflicting changes, but certainly enable this in your application. It's very cool. Oh yeah, we're also
that's it. I think that from there on it's just the XAF block and the XPO block, but both of them are on the DevExpress side. So I think we made it, Dave. So thank you everyone for sticking with us until the end. I think that I really enjoyed this travel from memory to memory lane. We have seen how far XAF have come in all these years. And of course, we have already several stand-up that covers Blazor, and Blazor is definitely the brand new, shiny kid that is actually with so many great things that I cannot wait to see what things that we as a community are going to be doing with XAF Blazor, and we are doing right now. So I know that the next version of XAF Blazor will be coming in the next weeks. So I'm really excited for that. There are a lot of, especially with the grid, a lot of improvement enhancers there that we're still missing, and I think they are coming really, really soon. And also as well, a new improvement with the XAF web API, that they also are actually, for us, that we are universal license holder, is coming out of the box, they will have a lot of modules, validation, a lot of things integrated in that XAF web API. And for everyone else, they will have the web API available of charge for free, but only for regular CRUD operation, nothing else, not for security, not for other modules, or for audit trail, or for something else. So as always, thank you for being here. As always, feel free to share your experience. Let us know what you have tried. If you have any question or any doubt, you can reach out to us later. And thanks for watching. And let me take the picture because Jose will complain if I don't. So anyone who wants to take their camera on, that would be great. All right. All right. Thank you, guys, and see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.